Hi. If you've been watching the news lately, you've probably heard at least a little bit about what's going on in the South China Sea. And so, what I'd like to do today is explain a little bit of the background and context of the various disputes in the South China Sea in more general terms, and then also specifically what's been happening over the last 6 months or so with regard to the second Thomas Shoal. So, the South China Sea is a body of water, roughly speaking, south of China, east of Vietnam, west of the Philippines, and north of Malaysia and Indonesia. And this body of water has been, for 1,000 years, one of the most important intersections of commerce and exchange generally, not just of goods and capital, but also of people and ideas, right? People have moved around this region. Ideas have circulated throughout the region about politics, religion, economics, all kinds of other things, and of course, tremendous flows of commerce. So if we look in the present day, a very significant percentage of global trade flows through the South China Sea, even to places well beyond its borders. If you think about trade, for example, between Japan or Korea and the Middle East or Europe, much of that trade is going to flow through the South China Sea. Besides trade, another aspect of the South China Sea that is important is that it is thought to contain very, very rich reserves of hydrocarbons, both oil and natural gas, although these haven't really been explored or exploited the way that they potentially could be, if indeed they are there. It's also one of the richest fishing areas in the world. And so, for all of these reasons, it's an incredibly important place to everybody that's nearby and actually to any global power. So, why do we see conflict in the South China Sea? What this really relates back to are three sets of decisions taken in the aftermath of World War II. In the first, the United States, emerging from the war, saw itself and designated itself as the global guarantor of freedom of navigation on the high seas and of the safety of shipping and maritime commerce more generally. The second issue is something called the Nine Dash Line. And the Nine Dash Line was asserted by the then Republic of China government under the nationalist Kuomintang in the aftermath of World War II to encompass most of the South China Sea with a line of 9 dashes. And that area was claimed as historically Chinese territorial waters, right? That these should be recognized as part of China's territorial waters because of historical affinity, historical patterns of shipping, and fishing and settlement and so on. And so this claim was advanced. It wasn't really challenged for a long time. It wasn't challenged immediately by the Allied powers, and it wasn't really challenged in a very concrete way by anyone else until substantially later. And of course, the new government in China after 1949 took up the claim with gusto and said, this is also our claim. This is a claim we're not going to roll back from the old regime. So that's the second decision. The third set of decisions was by Southeast Asian nations. Upon gaining independence in the years after 1945, between about 1945 and 1965, those countries asserted what would be normal, quote unquote, territorial waters, exclusive economic zones, definitions of continental shelf, etc., under generally recognized provisions like the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea. And so that means that there are substantial areas of the South China Sea claimed by one country or another as exclusive economic zone or even sometimes territorial water that are within the area claimed by China inside the Nine Dash Line. So we see this in particular, or most frequently, in the largest areas and the most contentious areas with Vietnam and the Philippines. But there are other areas as well within the Nine Dash Line that are claimed as exclusive economic zone or territorial waters by other countries in Southeast Asia. So, what's been happening recently? Recently, we've seen this flare up of tensions around this small piece of reef called the Second Thomas Shoal. And the Second Thomas Shoal is just west of the large Philippines island of Palawan, and it is well within what the Philippines claims as its exclusive economic zone. It is also inside the 9-dash line claimed by China. So in 1995, China decided to try to build some installations, maritime installations, on a nearby reef called Mischief Reef. This angered the Philippines and other countries and induced the Philippines to decide in 1999 to deliberately ground an old ship called the Sierra Madre on the Second Thomas Shoal, and to keep that there grounded with a small crew on the ship more or less permanently, in order to prevent China from claiming or taking control of the Second Thomas Shoal and extending its overall claim, or control of areas within the claim. And so since 1999, the Philippines Navy has had to resupply the crew on the ship with food and water, and also equipment and materials for repairing and maintaining the ship, which is in very bad condition. The Second Thomas Shoal also has a fairly narrow entry point for ships to come in, and a fairly shallow channel that ships have to navigate. This means that China has adopted a tactic of stationing Coast Guard vessels nearby this small entrance and trying to block Philippine ships from entering the shoal to resupply the Sierra Madre. The Philippines has responded to this by using small ships that can navigate quickly through the shallow channel, and by trying therefore to avoid direct confrontation with the Chinese ships that usually try to block them. Now, also significant is that in 2016, the Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled that under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, to which both the Philippines and China are parties, features like the Second Thomas Shoal and Mischief Reef are not to be considered pieces of land or islands that can be claimed by a particular country. And so this basically sides with the Philippines in this ongoing dispute, and says that China really has no basis in that convention of law for claiming these features. Since 2023, Chinese ships have become more aggressive in their blocking tactics. There have been incidents of ramming. There have been several incidents, many incidents actually, of water cannon use against the resupply ships. And in at least a few of these instances, sailors on the Philippine ships have been injured by the water cannon, and significant damage has been done to some of those ships. The Philippines has protested these actions, and in addition, the United States has said publicly that attacks on Philippine ships could constitute grounds for invoking the Mutual Defense Treaty that the United States and the Philippines have with one another. All of this means that the tensions over the Second Thomas Shoal and in the South China Sea more broadly are extremely dangerous, not only for the South China Sea itself, for Southeast Asia as a broader region, but also for great power competition as it plays out around the world, notably between the United States and China. And so that is an explanation of the situation in the South China Sea. Thank you.